G'day everybody, thanks for stopping by. In today's video, we're going to be having a look at another Viofo camera. I'm happy to report. Now this is the A229 Plus model that we're going to be looking at sticking in the Pajero. Now if you follow the channel, you know that Pajero is currently running the T130 Viofo, which is the triple camera kit. And also in the Commodore, I'm running the A119 Mini. As you can tell, I've had multiple Viofo cameras. And look, and at the end of the day, as I've said in the other reviews from Viofo cameras, is they've always just worked for me. Their job is just to record footage and to be able to provide you that footage, to be able to pull it out and do whatever you want to do with it. All I expect from my camera is record the footage and let me get it off it. Obviously, I want decent quality as well. And all the Viofo cameras that I've tried and tested, some of them supplied by Viofo, some of them I've paid for them myself. All of the Viofo cameras that I've had, I've been more than happy with the quality and I've been more than happy to stick with them. So, with that said, when Viofo reached out and said, hey, you want to try another one of the cameras? I'm not stupid. Yes, please. So just a quick interruption. I just want to say a big thank you to both Rofi and to Viofo. If you follow the channel, as you're aware, recently had to put Titan down. He was my little dog, 17 years old. Unfortunately, my nephew also took his own life recently. So it's been a pretty shit couple of weeks. But I wanted to say thank you to the guys at Rofi and Viofo. When I let them know what was going on and said, look, I'm going to be a little bit late with a couple of videos, they were great and haven't pushed me to get this done. So I want to say big thanks to both Rofi and Viofo for allowing me the extra time that I needed to get this done. Look, if you've got somebody in your life that you think is struggling, just make a phone call. Duck around, go and see them, have a coffee, have a beer, you know, whatever you think's needed. On the other side of that coin, if you're struggling, reach out, go and see somebody, talk to somebody. Just take that step. If you get to that point where you think you need to do this, look, if you get to that point where you think you need to do this, please just stop and just reach out to somebody or anybody. End of public service announcement. And I know I said it in the previous video, but thanks very much for all the comments. It's very much appreciated. Thank you. Now, from bad things is born good things. So on a positive note, that does mean that I've been keeping myself really, really busy just to keep my mind on different things. So you've got lots and lots of videos coming up. I hope you enjoy them. Let's get into this one. The new 229 Plus uses a new Sony Starvis 2 sensor, which improves the picture quality and it also improves the low light performance or the nighttime performance. So I'm really, really keen to check this out. The other reason I'm really keen to check this out, as I mentioned, I've got the T130 in here. Now it's a slightly different format to the one we've got now. It's more of a barrel design up there behind the mirror. Two cameras up the front. You've got the front facing one, you've got the one facing inside into the cockpit, into the car, and then you've also got the rear camera at the back. I'm just going to refer you to the video on the T130 as far as just installing or just running the cable from front to back of the Pajero. Obviously your car may be different and it's going to be up to you to figure out how to install that cable to run it from the front and then run it around to the back to the rear camera. You will find in the kit, Viofo does supply you with a little trim tool, which is nice, so you can use that just to pry your trim apart. And then just literally push the cable up the back and run it around and to the rear camera. It really isn't that hard. So as far as the A229 Plus version that we've got the 3 camera setup. So ultimately we've got 2K at the front, Quad HD at the front. We've got a Quad HD 2K camera at the back, and then we've got the full HD or just the HD camera, which will be interior facing into the car. Now my cameras in the Pajero need to do dual duty for me. In addition to being that insurance that comes with having a dash cam in the car in the event of an accident, my cameras in the Pajero also have the responsibility of taking footage for my YouTube content creation. So I like to be able to use clips from in the car when I'm forward driving. So here's an example when I've got somebody at the car shooting the car doing the forward drive track. I've also got footage from the front of the car, I've got footage from the rear of the car, and I've also got footage from inside the car. You know, if something goes wrong and there's a rollover or something like that, it'd be nice to have that footage of me going upside down doing my thing. I'm a big fan of having the 3 camera setup in the Pajero. The one thing that I wasn't a particular fan of with the T30 model was that purplish tint from the infrared type setup camera that was interior facing. Happy with the quality front and back, and the quality of the one inside, but it always had that sort of a purple tint to it. Now that's because it will work in low light. You know, inside the car there's not as much light, obviously, as there is outside, cars going around, street lights, your headlights. And whilst that did give a good image quality, I didn't like the color tint to it. So when I was a little bit reluctant when making my YouTube videos to cut that into the video because it just didn't look as nice. From the examples that I've seen and the reviews that I've seen online of this already, it doesn't look like that's going to be an issue for us. I will either run at a minimum 128 gig card and with a preference for a 256 gig card. So I can just chuck it in. I don't need to worry about it looping and then overriding it, and then I can have at least 2 days worth of footage that I can then pull out and transfer over to the computer. This is a little Bluetooth button which you can stick anywhere on the dash, and then in the event of an accident or something occurs in front of one of the cameras that you want to capture and you want to lock that file, normally you can just reach up and hit the button on the dash cam and that will save that file. It'll put it into a little stored file. That means it cannot be overwritten. Stick this anywhere you want on the dash, on the steering wheel, whatever the case may be, and it just works as a remote button that you just hit this button rather than reaching up and hitting the camera itself, and that'll store that file. That is something that I do very regularly when I'm trying to create content, certainly in off-road situations where something interesting happens and I'll just reach up and hit the button. It takes that file and puts it into its own little separate folder. It saves me from a workflow perspective having to go through all the different files that I've got recorded. It just drops those over in a specific folder for me, and I know I've got all the interesting stuff in one folder. You're going to have 3 files saved for any time period. What you would see then is footage from the front camera, footage from the rear camera, and then footage from the internal camera, all as 3 separate files. They are identified with an F, an R, and an I, if I remember correctly. So front, R for rear, and then I for interior. So you can easily identify which is which file or which is which camera. They'll also have date and time sequences attached as part of the file name as well. As the camera goes, again, it's very similar to the A119 and the A119 Mini. So it's pretty much gone back to the same form factor as the A119. What I have done is just gone and grabbed the A119 Mini, which is the variant that you see here. And you can see there is quite a bit of a size difference. Actually, I want to say that this is bigger than the original A119. But you'll see that the form factor is pretty much exactly the same, just a larger version. FYI, this A119 Mini is not the one that I have in the Commodore that was sent out to me for the purpose of review. This is the one that I've purchased for my nephew to go in his car. So that's how much I like my Viofo products. I've gone out and purchased that one for him. So we've got front-facing camera. Obviously, this is the mount here. This is the T130 that you can see was mounted in the front of the Pajero. This is the front-facing camera here with adjustability up and down. And this was the interior-facing camera that would do, what's that, around about 90 degrees. It was slightly more than 90 degrees, I think. I now need to remove the other one. And if there's one thing I've got to give them is that this 3M tape that they've got on here is just ridiculous as far as how well it sticks to stuff. So I'm going to have a challenge on my hand to try and uninstall that so I can take this across. And this is actually going to go across and going to go into the Commodore. The new A229 Plus is going to be high resolution. We've got the Starvis 2 image sensor, which is going to better low light, better image performance, better image quality, all of the above. I do like the form factor of this because you put this up behind your mirror and it pretty much disappears. Obviously, we're going to see a little bit of this behind the mirror. It does have the screen on it. Because both of these are going to be able to be connected through my Android head unit, as far as using the app on it, that's going to be my primary means of making adjustments to, image quality, having a look at the files, just changing any settings rather than doing the push button and the screen on the front. So I'd be curious to see how small a unit they could give me, maybe the size of the A119 Mini or smaller. Don't give me the screen like I didn't have on the T130. Just give me the GPS, the mount, maybe just a couple little buttons on the front, and then let me interact with the unit just from the Android, and I think I would be happy with that. I like to interact with it through the Android head unit, but not everybody's got one of those in the car. Most people carry a phone. So obviously you're going to be able to get the app for this in Android. You can also get it on iOS as well, but jump on their website, you'll be able to see that there. Right hand side, you've got your input for your micro SD card. They've gone with a phono 3.5mm plug, I think it is, for the interior facing camera. That's an interesting choice. And then for the rear facing camera, we've got the USB-C, which is nice because we've already got that run through the car. There you go. So in addition to the main camera, we've also got the two interior cameras. This one is, so this is USB-C. Now these look to be exactly the same as the rear facing camera that we've already got. Trick for young players, or trap for young players. Cameras look identical. They both have USB-C input. There's no real, they're 360-degree rotatable, the pair of them. The only difference that I'm seeing here, and this is how you're going to identify the interior camera from the rear camera. Can you see that one on the top? You've got your infrared IR LEDs on that top one. So this one's going to be your interior, which is your 1080. This one's going to be your 2K or your Quad HD for the rear with your Starvis 2 sensors. So you're going to need to make sure you get those right. Wow, okay. Kudos, Viofo, that they have sent us a manual, which is probably about 30 odd pages long, 37 pages long, all in English. Okay. Well, let's also cover off some specs while we're here. So we've got the 3-channel recording, 2K at the front, 2K at the rear, 1080 inside, and that obviously has your infrared sensors for night vision there as well. Your Starvis 2 IMX675 sensor for front and rear. Not sure what the sensor is on the internal one, doesn't say. This one now supports smart voice control. Not that I've ever used that. Not that I'm probably going to use that. Dual band 2.5 and 5 gig Wi-Fi. Obviously, we've got the GPS module, voice notifications, which was something that I switched off on the T130, but there as well. We've got the parking mode. Now, I do have, from previous units that they've sent me out, which I've never installed, which I've always intended to install, the HK4 hard wiring kit, which allows this to run in parking mode. So if somebody's to come up and bump your car while it's turned off and it's parked in the car park, the camera is going to capture that, and I think I'm going to get around to installing that this time. May not be part of this video, but I'm definitely going to get this done. It's one of those things that I keep telling myself I'm going to do. So currently, in both of my cars, I am running them from the cigarette lighter socket as far as powering them goes. Now, this one is going to be the same. So if you're just looking to install it in your car, you don't need anything elaborate. You don't need to use the HK4 kit, hard wiring kit. You don't need to wire it into a fuse or anything along those lines. All you need is a cigarette lighter socket. Plug the supplied adapter in, or just a USB port. So if you've got a USB port somewhere, you don't actually need to use the cigarette lighter socket, but most cars have still got these. Plug this in. You've still got a spare USB port there as well if you need to use it. And then you've just got USB-C on the other end there as well. And up to 512 gig of memory card as well. So my recommendation there, get the biggest card you can afford or the biggest card you have and stick it in there. So our interior camera cable, our rear camera cable, our power cable, trim tool, stickies, complement of manuals and clear screens, our 3 cameras as well. Basically, the biggest challenge you've got of installing this is running that cable from the front to back. So not that hard of a job. Take your time, just drop the trim, stick that cable up in behind the trim around the front, and then just run it around to the back. If you've got a hatch or something along those lines, it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge. With the Pajero, because this rear door opens, and this is why I won't be rerunning the cable. We're going to use the existing one. But I had to route that cable down from the inside here, down through into this door. So through the joint into the door, and then around here and up here. So depending on your car, you may or may not be better looking at the 2 camera model. So your interior camera, your front facing camera and your interior camera. But if you are committed, so for example, you've got a sedan or something like that, that process would be significantly easier. It is quite possible, depending on the layout of your car, that you might be able to mount it up somewhere like that and then have that pointing out the back of the car. So if your whole rear window on the car opens up, for example, this may not be an issue for you. You may not need to run this out and have it stuck on the rear window. You might be able to stick it inside the car, for example, and just have it pointing towards the rear window. Lots of flexibility there. So because I've already got the USB-C cable already ran over the back here, and because I've been happy with the position of that camera, I'm literally going to re-stick the new one right on the same spot that the old one was. So this is how the T130 was mounted up behind the windscreen. You can see where I've got that mounted there. A little bit lower than the windscreen so I can still reach the buttons here, not be interrupted. And mainly so I had the interior camera had a clear view rather than being obstructed by the rear view mirror here. That's the good flexibility of the new one. We can mount this literally as high as we want behind that rear view mirror. Then we've got the flexibility of running this interior one and putting it anywhere we want. So it is going to start talking to us initially. So the voice functions are on. I'm going to turn those off later on because they tend to annoy me a little bit. And I prefer just the beeps. And because I've got the screen, the voices were very handy on the T130 because you didn't have the screen. It was nice for it to tell you what you wanted to hear. But in this instance, because we've got the screen, we've got the Android head unit, we've got all those other ways to interact with the unit, I'm going to turn those voices off. I'm just not a big fan. So because we don't have any other cameras connected to the main unit, we can run it as a standalone, and you can buy it as a standalone. It'll basically say one camera recording. Now the voice prompts are something that I turn on in one particular situation. Now that's when I take my cars in for a service. When I take my car to the mechanic and they take it for a test run, for example, and they jump into the car, the system is going to say, 3 cameras recording, 1 camera recording, whatever the case may be, and they have then been informed that that car has recording going and they may be getting recorded. Or if I thought I had my other cameras connected up and it didn't say 3 cameras recording, then you'll know that you need to then go and check your connections because something's not going right.
Recording. 2 channels started.
Still saying 2 channels started. I don't know why. So the bad news is, for me only, is that original USB-C cord doesn't work. So I had to just rerun the new one. Now, living in Australia, I can tell you that we get filthy hot summers and you need to be careful about what dash camera you throw in your car in Australia, because not all of them survive the heat and not all of them will continue to function long term like you get with the Viofos, depending on what sort of battery or power source they have inside them. If they've just got like a little lithium battery and it's stuck up on that windscreen and it gets cooked during the summer sun, it'll be 80 plus in a car locked up in summer here. We're going to see 45 plus. So I think that's something around 110, 115 odd Fahrenheit. I'll put it up on the screen if I get that wrong. So we can see those ambient temperatures outside in the summer. So you can only imagine what it's going to be for a car sitting in the sun locked up. If they have a lithium battery, the lithium battery dies. It can't handle being charged, discharged in those sorts of temperatures. So you want one that uses a capacitor as far as the power source. What we've got in the Viofos, and I can tell you hand over heart that these things survive the summer heat. With the T130, I had to position that unit down below the mirror, again, because I've got that tint across the top. I've now got this stupid Den Monkey sticker across the front. For the purpose of positioning the front one, you're locked into where your second one's going to be positioned. You don't really have any choice in that matter. But with this, you do. So this, I'm really liking this. I'm really it's gone from something that I thought was going to be a bit of a pain to something that I'm really enjoying, and I really want to make the most of it. But disappointingly, I think I'm still going to just stick it in the most obvious position straight up over the rear view mirror, as it has the little IR LEDs on the front. Now, if you have this positioned too close to something of bright, like the white interior or something along those lines, it is possible that it might reflect and give you a flare and interfere with your vision in the car. So we do want to have some sort of separation of this from anything along those lines. Just a couple of things that I want to change is that I'm going to leave all the notifications on for now, just so I can hear what it says for the full experience part of the review. Loop recording, I've got that set to 10 minutes. You can go 1, 3, 5, 10, I think it is. I want that on 10. If I was just using this for normal usage, for in case of an accident, I would probably have the set to 3 or something like that. But for the purpose of content creation, I want 10 minutes worth of footage. It just makes it easier for me to go through and pull stuff if I want to include it in the video. And then it also gives it context. So if I've had an event and I want to keep a file, it shows me everything leading up to it, possibly some stuff afterwards. So it just makes more sense for me, my use case scenario, to have it at 10 minutes. I want to record audio exposure for front and back. We'll play around with that later, but at the moment it's going to leave it bog stock out of the box. WDR, that's good for, you know, exposure and contrast and stuff, so we'll leave that on, see how that works. G-Shock sensor, I've got that set to low. One feedback I had for Viofo before that they responded back and said, oh, we'll have a look at that, is that the sensor as far as a shock in it thinking there's been an accident and it needs to lock the file, I thought was too high and couldn't be set low enough. Again, because I'm four-wheel drive, sometimes I just go over a speed bump and it would set it off and it would say lock the file. But if I'm four-wheel driving, I'm bumping and bouncing and all that sort of stuff, and it was just going constant. Perhaps I need the ability to turn that off altogether. At this point, I've got it set to low. We'll see whether there's been improvements there. As far as bitrate, I've got it set to maximum. I want the best quality I can get, again, for footage and for YouTube. You've got a whole bunch of date stuff. The parking mode is off. Infrared, I've got set to auto. That does a pretty good job. Turns the infrared lights on when it gets dark, so you can see better in the cab. Turns them off during the day. I don't need to rotate any of the images. Like I said, I've got that camera set up in the right direction, the right way. If you had your camera upside down or back to front, you can rotate the image, which is upside down, and then there's also mirror left to right. So you can make adjustments in the app if you haven't got the camera facing exactly the right way. Whilst you're interested in me talking about it and saying sensors and all that, it's interesting, but you want to see the footage, and that's what I want to see. So we'll get this stuck up. We'll get it in. I'm about to head out and do some metal detecting. We've got some rain coming the next couple of days. We'll take it for a night run. We'll do all that. We'll be looking at that right now. Now, the only issue that I've had with the Viofo camera, and this one specifically, is a couple of times I've recorded the footage and it just hasn't had a speed. So the GPS just hasn't recorded a speed in the corner of that footage there. No biggie, it's just happened a couple of times. I haven't seen it since. I thought it was worth mentioning.
It's bolted in place and has no adjustments, so the printer includes a bed probe that allows it to get a mesh 3D's bottle opener in 20 minutes. This was sliced with 6 walls and 50% infill for super strength. Unlike a lot of bottle opener prints, this one doesn't require a coin or other bit of metal. It's more than up to the task. Plate. Nothing wrong with it. Works really good, but I prefer a spring steel removable build plate. Removable build plate, and since the Prusa is already here, just ready to go, I just use that rather than put something like that on this printer. Secondly, is the extruder. The Prusa is a direct drive, and the SR is a Bowden tube setup. Again, nothing wrong with Bowden tube setups. They work good, but personally, I prefer a direct drive extruder on my 3D printers. But I got good news. FLSun has come out with a new printer, and it's like they read
Ox beam. See that spot out the front there. High beam. Light fox. That's much better. Now, to be honest, I'm not sure if we've been a bit silly going down here in this weather, because it is a real good clay base. I mean, just on my own. There's no... So that's it, that's the Viofo A299 Plus version that I've got, which is the 3-channel version. You can get it in the single, the duo, and then the triple version as well. Hopefully you can hear me with this rain. We've got a good sized storm coming in. Now, as far as wrapping this up, you know I love my Viofo cameras. I've been happy with literally every one of them I've had. They have literally all just worked for me, and I can't ask any more than that. If I were to make any changes to the A229, I'd want 60 frames a second. We're limited to the 30 on the front and back cameras at that sort of 1440p or at the 2K. So I'd like to see 60 frames a second. That's my preference on my cameras. That issue with the speed not turning up, that's no biggie. I've seen it a couple of times, haven't seen it again since. They do seem to have made that change to the impact or the auto storage of the file if you have an impact. So the car recognises it's been in an accident, for example. Again, off-road, that was bothering me a little bit with the other cameras, because every time I would go over a bump, it would think it was in an accident and it would want to store that file. This one on the lower setting hasn't been doing that to me, so thumbs up to Viofo for making that improvement. I love the layout of this one, love the fact that I can take that interior camera and put it pretty much anywhere I want within that sort of, so many feet, depending on that cable length. So that's awesome. I haven't got around to playing with that yet. I will. Of course, let's not forget the image quality. I think that's a great improvement over what the T130 had. Didn't realise I'd had the T130 for that long, so obviously it's new generations. Constantly making improvements, and I think this is a good example of that. Yeah, so that's the Viofo A229 Plus 3-channel version that I've got there. Obviously, I'm happy with it, and that's all I can say. Thanks very much for stopping by. Look forward to catching you on the next one. Cheers.